and I'm the past president of the Multicultural Council of Oshawa, Durham, also past president of the Congress of Black Women, Durham chapter, which is now folded, and I'm a director of Club Parade. Because as a psychiatric nurse, the psychiatrist never left me. When I was a nurse at Whitby, we were admitting patients. Now, we don't admit patients anymore. They don't, because it's a research hospital. So where do these people go? They go to Oshawa General, which is short term. And then short term, after 2 or 3 months, they kick them out. And they're on the street. So with this young man, I had to go down there and say, to Oshawa General, and say, I'm his aunt. And there's mental illness in the family. I'm not his aunt. You know, but I knew that there was mental illness in the family. And so the doctor said, I'm only going to give you 2 minutes. I said, you're going to get the 2 minutes from me. Here are my credentials. And he stopped. And I said, you can't tell me what's his diagnosis or how you're treating him, but I'm going to tell you what to do. This is diagnosis and this is how you do it. And he stood and he listened. And by the time I heard a noise inside, they asked me if I want to come in with his parents. And I said, you know, that's private, they can go. Or this, he was beating up the doctor because he was so psychotic, you know. And what the doctor really came out to say, what do you want me to, where do you want me to discharge him to? So he went in and beat up the doctor. He wouldn't have beaten up the doctor if he was a sane person, but he was psychotic. So, you know, I said to the doctor, look, you can discharge him out on the street where he'll kill somebody. You can discharge him to his home with his mother, where he'll hurt his mother, or you can keep him, you know, and make sure that he's well. And I'm here to make sure that you keep him well, because Bell Canada has a big research foundation called Let's Talk.
Yes,
So now, let's talk. And he did listen, but by the time they went in, the guy beat him up, and he was admitted until he got better.
Right.
But he's not well again. So these are the things that personally, on a personal basis, because it's personal for me, I'm fighting. In the schools down there, children, you can see depression starting from about 10 years old. And there's a lot of kids in high school who probably don't fit. You know which children are suffering now? They're in between, like my boys' children, because they're married to white women. And so these children see themselves as, you want to hear the name? Caramel. So they don't fit in any society. They don't fit in the white, and they don't fit in the black. So they're caramel. So as they grow up, you're going to be in charge of them. You know, because I don't think, I have gone to other associations say, could you give me space? Because I have 20 children that I'm looking about at the school, talking to, you know, to teach them. There's a color called caramel, but it's not about black people or white people. There are different shades of black, and there are different shades of beige. Because I've not yet to see a white man. You know what I mean? So there's different shades of, you know, and things and so forth. And, but you know, it's to get the black community to come together. It's very difficult.
So what inspired you to get involved with these organizations?
I think for me, I was born to be someone who serves. I know that when I was a child. And I've always wanted to be a nurse. But I didn't know I wanted to be a nurse. But when I went, I went here even to do nursing because I wanted to travel. And while I was a nurse, I realized that it wasn't about money. It was about that I really loved what I was doing. I was called to be a psychiatric nurse, I know that. And I live in nurses' residence. And so there were nurses from Ireland, from Scotland, from different Caribbean islands, and I said to them, let's start the International League of Nations.
Wow.
And that's when I first started something. And then you learn about each other's culture. And I think that has always stayed with me, resonated with me, like to learn, because I think when you learn about someone's culture, it's not just geography or history, it's teaching you tolerance and empathy, understanding, And, you know, with all of that coming, loving each other. And so we're still members of Club Carib, and that's a very vibrant and healthy organization. But it could be healthier in a way that they lack where the education part is. You know, most of the members are Trinidadians, and so they believe in teaching the soca dancing and shake, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love it. I enjoy the children dancing and everything. And what I found with those children is that going on stage, they were frightened little babies, you know. And I've watched them grow up to go to university and get married. And when you watch children from that, you see their self-esteem bloom, you know. And but what happened, I think, where we all lacked is not teaching the young people anything else on the dancing or the steel pan. So when they grew up and they went to high school or they got married, they're finished. Whereas I think if you were teaching education, they would have come around and teach. Okay, so we've talked about the education part. Let's talk about the fun part. You find people like me. I don't have anywhere to go to socialize downtown. If I want to go to, say, a West Indian place where we can have dinner and then dance afterwards, there's no place for me. For the young people, when you go down to Excuses or whatever it is, downtown Oshawa, like your age group, how much of you are going to sit down there? Do you know what I mean? So there need to be more, you know, I'm hoping that we'll have more, or even if you don't have events either, if, say you have an association, you get a building. If you put on things, because Club Carib they don't put on many, you know, maybe once a year, twice a year. You know, put on something where, I mean, culturally, I can come and say, let me go and have dinner and listen to some, you know, reggae music this evening. You know what I mean? It takes me out of my home, you know, and we need things like that.
So how was it like witnessing that change, seeing a more diverse community of Oshawa built up?
Well, Durham region did not recognize that the region was changing. I think very few of us saw the region was changing, and there started being problems in the school, and we reached out. So that race relationship, we realized we had to bridge it now. I'm only going to speak for myself. I remember when at that symposium, something hit me because I had a cousin who was a police officer here in Durham. And not to do it particularly that day now, long time, I said to him, how did you become a police officer in Durham? Because, you know, there were only two. And he said he had an aptitude, a psychological test, an aptitude test. I said, well, what was that like? And he said, well, they gave me a table with 3 legs. And then they gave me a donkey with no tail. I was angry. I was really angry. So when we had the symposium with the police, you know, we had approached a couple of the police officers and talked about it. And we had a symposium. I can't keep my mouth shut. So I put my hand up and I told them about this, you know, what I'd heard about how this officer got in. And my remark was, if my 3 sons ever approached me to go into the force, to go and take a stupid test like that, to let them go into, in my opinion, it's a big position, responsible position. It would be a no-no in my house. And there was a lawyer, he's an Irish lawyer, who embraced diversity. He said, what did you say? And that was how that movement started from there. And Raphael Francis, Mr. Clark, and, you know, others, we took it into motion now, having meetings with the police and so forth. And not only did we ask about black people coming in, because that's not what we're about. It's because Durham was becoming now diverse.
Yes.
And in the force, when you look in the force, it was tall white men. So one of the things that we asked was women. You know, it doesn't matter what ethnicity. you know, and so on. We want to see a culture, to show the cultural background of Durham region, you know. And my thing of talking to them was, as a nurse, if a patient came in and the patient was a black Jamaican and I had a Canadian come in and they were both in labor pains, the Canadian woman would say, hoo, 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 for her pain. The Jamaican woman would say, whoa, I'm in pain, okay? It's how we react. Our expressions are different. So if a policeman walk into my house, and because I talk loud, and I'm going, oh my gosh, you know, so and so, and I'm throwing my hands around because I talk with my hands as expression, he would see that as I'm an angry, behaving, irritating woman. You know what I mean? And he'd probably be arrested. But the Canadian woman, with who, she's subtle. So our behaviors, the diversity, you see, if you look at the Italians and all of us, we all behave differently and we express differently.
So to be culturally aware.
So you have to be the cultural awareness, you know, and that was a word that we brought in at the time. I think the impression that a lot of white people, we're all immigrants, right? But that they all see with us from the Caribbean is the jumping up. You know, jumping up during Caravana time and so forth. I used to jump up too, right? So, you know, they see us as fun, but not using the brain. You know what I mean? So, thanks to the Canadian Jamaican Association, who started the classes, you know, and we started having symposium and so forth with the police and with the school boards. And one of the things that came out, you know, with this, I told you about the police, but with the school board, there were no black or teachers who were not white, who were not Caucasian, that they were vice principal or principal. And we started that fight, and it was quite a fight. And Sarah McDonald was the very first principal. I think she became vice principal first, and then principal. And she became, for us as black people, because she made it to the top. You know what I mean? But it wasn't because we were not fighting for a cause. So when we met, she was our beacon of hope up there.
In your opinion, do you think that the Club Carib and all of these other associations that you have been a part of in the past, you've seen their growth, do you think that they're leaving an impactful legacy in the city of Durham?
I think they have left. Yeah. I have seen kids that have gone on to be psychologists, lawyers, that were in the Jamaican Club. It was an after-school program. I'm not just talking that they were just members, but there was a Saturday morning classes that we had, and by attending, you know, it helped them. If they weren't brilliant in some ways, there was somebody to teach them, to help them along. And you know what? It wasn't just the people who taught them along, but it was also the other people, because I didn't teach them, but I praised them. Because it is very, very important to lift them up, you know. And I think sometimes, you know, in a community, what is lacking is having grandmothers to lift up, to, you know, even to say to Mr. Clark, you're doing a good job, you know, or to say to me, you're doing a good job, Miss Brown. You know what I mean? You always need a lifter. At Club Carib, even though it was just the dancing that they're giving the children, they were teaching them great self-esteem. And I'll go back to say, there was a girl, a Caucasian girl, who came and joined. And she didn't know how to move because we have the natural rhythm. And we saw her struggle and struggle, but we praised her. You know, my husband always go up and praise her. And do you know something? As she grew up, she became one of the best dancers. And now she's married and she's gone to university. She's the only one that has come back to help.
Do you think that we've progressed from the founding of Pinewood to this date in terms
of...
Oh
gosh, if Dr. Blake, I'm only speaking now because I work with him because it was an alcoholic unit with him,
Yes.
and he took it out of there to Parke.
Mm-hmm.
And he I have seen him do drumming at Parke, during Fiesta Week, and people in the audience saying, "Thank you, Dr. Blake. Thank you, Dr. Blake." I'm talking about white people saying, "Thank you, Dr. Blake," because he's a very kind man.
Very kind.
He's very calm, and so these are people who he has prevented from going into the gutters, no matter who you are, because there will be alcoholics on the street lying down. So he provided that center, and the center is still going.
Yes.
We as a people, I'm talking about black people, are not willing to help each other, but I don't think we're reaching out in the right way. I think, and when I say the right way, each of us has a gift. I know I have the gift of, I can go and ask whoever to do something and they'll do it because I have that gift. Somebody has a gift of something else, print. Tap in on everybody resource because every single one of us has a gift. And you just got to tap in and let that person use it.
I know you had mentioned before when you were in the store with that lady and you stopped to have a talk. I used to live in Milton for a while when I was living with my sister, and you'd walk down the street and you'd smile at somebody and they'd come over and you'd have a conversation. You don't even know this person, and you'd stop and you'd chat. Afterwards, I moved back to Toronto to go back to school, and I was walking down the street and I smiled at somebody and I looked away. And then I'm like, okay, maybe he's having a bad day. And then I smiled at the next person and scowled at me. And I was like, oh, okay.
Probably that person they're not used to having somebody smile at them.
But it's the big, it's the population size. I find that the more crowded we are, the bigger the city. Sometimes we don't make the effort to have that face-to-face connection. We're connected electronically, but we're not connected as people.
Yeah. I forget, in psychology they teach you, I forget what it's called again, but to every 6th person that you meet out there is a relationship. And you know what? When I first learned that, I tried it out. I started looking to see every single. And it may not be every single, but if you keep that smiling, there's a connection.
Yeah.
There's a connection, with you and that person. I was telling it to my mayor, and the next thing I know, his family are from Jamaica.
Oh.
Yeah. And I said, no wonder I did love you so much. You know what I mean? And I did the next year the Durham International Festival. I gave the idea to somebody, this guy Parke, you've heard of him? Well, he was a black judge on Canadian Idol. So I called him and I said, you want to do this festival? And he said, sure, but I had to do it his way. You know what, it doesn't really matter to me, just as long as it gets done. And people came out. And they had a good time. That was when I saw how Durham, in say 10 years from now, you're not going to recognize Durham. You know why? Because every black boy or every black woman out there is going to have a boyfriend or white husband. Or, you know what I mean? It is so socially mixed, they don't see the color difference, and that's what I see Durham coming to.
Yes.
So and that's a cultural diversity. It's not necessarily that they're Canadian, but they might end up finding but because the population is not enough boys to enough girls, they're going to interlock. They're going to interlock. And I told Mayor Henry, I said, this place is in a few years, and I won't be gone. It's going to be so beautiful.